20 consultants told the CEO to walk away. One single dad told her where they were wrong. The morning sun had barely risen above the city skyline when the largest conference room in Hartwell Innovations fell into complete silence. 20 of the country's highest-paid consultants had just reached the same conclusion. Their reports, filled with charts, predictions, and cold calculations, all pointed toward one painful decision. They insisted that the struggling manufacturing division should be shut down immediately. Thousands of employees would lose their jobs, entire families would lose their income, and a town that had depended on the factory for generations would slowly disappear. Every expert agreed there was no other choice. Before we continue, please like this video, comment, share it with someone who believes in kindness and second chances, and subscribe to Kindness Nest 2.0 if you believe one act of compassion can change an entire life. Your support helps us bring more heartfelt stories like this every day. Elena Whitmore had become one of the youngest CEOs in the country's technology industry. At only 39 years old, she had built a reputation for making impossible decisions without allowing emotions to interfere. Investors admired her confidence. Newspapers called her the Iron Executive. Behind the polished image, however, Elena carried the quiet burden of loneliness. Years of chasing success had left little room for friendships or family. Every decision she made affected thousands of lives, and every night she wondered whether leadership meant becoming someone who slowly forgot how to listen to ordinary people. The company she had inherited from her late father had once been famous for creating innovative medical equipment while providing stable jobs for entire communities. But changing markets, global competition, and rising production costs had slowly pushed one of its oldest manufacturing divisions toward collapse. For months, expensive consulting firms studied every possible solution. Their conclusion remained identical. Close the factory. Sell the land. Focus only on profitable technology. Shareholders would celebrate. Employees would suffer. Just outside the city, 34-year-old Mason Brooks was beginning another ordinary day. After losing his wife, Lily, to a sudden illness 4 years earlier, every sunrise had become a promise he made to his 8-year-old daughter, Sophie. He would keep moving forward no matter how difficult life became. Mason repaired industrial machines for small businesses across the region. His clothes were clean but worn, his truck was old, and every dollar had a purpose. Yet everyone who knew him admired his honesty, patience, and willingness to help others before helping himself. That morning, one of Hartwell's maintenance managers called him to inspect a machine that had unexpectedly failed just hours before the board meeting. Mason accepted the emergency job without realizing he was about to walk into a decision that could reshape thousands of lives. The factory surprised him. Instead of broken people waiting for closure, he found determined workers cleaning equipment, encouraging one another, and refusing to give up despite weeks of frightening rumors. Older employees proudly showed younger workers techniques that had been passed down through generations. Parents kept family photos beside their workstations. Friends laughed during short breaks even while uncertainty surrounded them. Mason noticed something the consultants had completely ignored. The factory was not simply producing equipment. It was holding together an entire community. While repairing the damaged machine, Mason overheard conversations about layoffs, mortgages, children's school fees, and elderly parents depending on medical insurance provided through the company. He silently finished his work, but the weight of those stories stayed with him. By coincidence, Elena toured the factory shortly afterward for what many believed would be her final inspection before signing the closure documents. Surrounded by executives and consultants, she noticed Mason carefully explaining to younger technicians how a small maintenance adjustment could extend the life of expensive equipment for years. One consultant dismissed the explanation without even stopping to listen. Another remarked that investing in aging machinery was financially irrational. Mason respectfully returned to his tools, but Elena found herself unexpectedly curious. She asked him why he seemed so confident when every expert believed the factory had no future. Mason answered with calm sincerity rather than arrogance. He explained that broken machines often looked beyond repair until someone understood why they had failed. People were no different. Businesses were no different. He admitted he knew nothing about billion-dollar investments, but he knew how communities survived. He believed the consultants had measured profits while completely ignoring potential. That afternoon, instead of signing the closure order, Elena drove alone back to the factory without informing anyone. She walked through every department without executives following behind her. She watched workers solving problems creatively despite outdated equipment. She visited nearby restaurants that depended on factory employees. She spoke with teachers whose classrooms were filled with children whose parents worked there. She realized that shutting the factory would trigger a chain reaction no spreadsheet could accurately predict. The following morning, Elena delayed the board vote, shocking shareholders and consultants alike. Financial news outlets criticized her hesitation. Investors questioned her leadership. Her inbox filled with warnings predicting disaster if she ignored professional advice. For the first time in years, Elena chose to trust observation over reputation. She invited engineers, technicians, machine operators, and maintenance workers into strategy meetings that had previously been reserved only for executives. Among them sat Mason, uncomfortable in borrowed business clothes but determined to speak honestly. Rather than presenting complicated theories, he described practical improvements that cost little but could dramatically increase efficiency. He suggested repairing instead of replacing several production systems. He encouraged cross-training employees to reduce downtime. Most importantly, he reminded everyone that workers who felt respected often discovered solutions expensive consultants never imagined. The atmosphere slowly changed. Employees who had expected dismissal suddenly felt heard. Departments began sharing ideas instead of protecting themselves. Experienced workers trained younger employees with renewed enthusiasm. Engineers collaborated directly with technicians instead of relying solely on reports. Progress came slowly, but it came. Within 3 months, production costs began falling. Equipment failures became less frequent. Customer satisfaction improved because experienced employees were no longer distracted by fear of unemployment. Even skeptical investors admitted the numbers looked better than expected. The consultants remained unconvinced. They argued the improvements were temporary and insisted the factory would eventually fail. Elena listened respectfully but refused to abandon the people who had already proven their resilience. Meanwhile, Mason continued living the same humble life. Every afternoon he picked Sophie up from school, helped with homework, cooked simple dinners, and reminded her that kindness mattered more than success. He never expected recognition. Knowing that hundreds of families still had jobs was reward enough. Months later, Hartwell Innovations launched a redesigned medical device built almost entirely by the factory everyone had wanted to close. Hospitals praised its quality and affordability. Orders exceeded every expectation. International buyers noticed the company's renewed commitment to craftsmanship, and profits rose steadily. Financial magazines praised Elena's leadership, calling her decision visionary. They celebrated her courage without realizing the idea had begun with a quiet single father carrying a toolbox into a factory. During the company's annual celebration held beneath bright blue skies on a beautiful spring afternoon, Elena stood before thousands of employees. Instead of thanking investors first, she thanked the workers who had refused to lose hope. She publicly acknowledged Mason, explaining that leadership sometimes meant listening to the person with the least impressive title rather than the loudest credentials. The applause seemed endless. Mason stood embarrassed while Sophie smiled proudly from the front row, realizing her father had taught an entire corporation the same lesson he taught her every evening around their small kitchen table. The story spread across the country. Business schools began discussing Hartwell's remarkable turnaround. Journalists searched for the secret strategy that had saved the company. They expected revolutionary technology or financial innovation. Instead, they found something much simpler. Someone had finally remembered that every statistic represented a human life. Elena herself changed as much as the company did. She no longer believed leadership meant having every answer. She learned that wisdom often arrived wearing ordinary clothes. She spent more time visiting employees, listening before deciding, and remembering the purpose her father had once described when she was a child. A successful company should improve lives, not simply increase profits. Years later, the once threatened factory became the most productive division in Hartwell Innovations. New families moved into the town. Local businesses flourished again. Schools expanded. Parks were rebuilt. What had nearly become another abandoned industrial site transformed into a symbol of hope because one person refused to believe that compassion and business could never exist together. If this story has touched your heart, please like, share, leave a heartfelt comment, and subscribe to Kindness Nest 2.0. Your support allows these inspiring stories of hope, courage, and second chances to reach more people around the world. Speech balloon special request: before this story ends, please comment, "People matter more than numbers." We'd love to know where you're watching from, and your words may inspire someone who needs hope today. As the afternoon sun gently illuminated the factory that nearly disappeared forever, Elena looked across hundreds of smiling faces and understood the greatest lesson of her career. 20 brilliant consultants had analyzed reports, forecasts, and financial risks. Only one ordinary single dad had looked beyond the numbers and seen the human hearts waiting to be believed in. In the end, the company was not saved by perfect calculations. It was saved by kindness, courage, and the simple decision to never give up on people when everyone else already had.